welcome back to this episode of CJ Discusses. Today we're going to discuss the challenge, season 40, and it's the mini final challenge. So we start off the episode with a throwback to Invasion of the Champions, and we see TJ telling all of the underdogs to pack up all of their stuff because there's too many of them and they needed to get rid of a bunch of them. So you know that was a purge. So we can pretty much surmise that a purge is coming with this mini challenge or mini final that's coming up. We also see a lot of the cast members also concerned about the amount of power that Johnny and his angels seem to have, which is kind of funny because there's really not that many of them at this point. There's really just Johnny, Rachel, Aviv, and Laurel. So, there's really just 5 of them against the entire house, and they're worried about how much power one man and 4 women have. Oh, sorry, I forgot Jenny, but she's basically, window dressing at this point. So, I don't know. While she might be a strong physical threat, her endurance is really, really terrible. And we find out later in the episode that she's got an inhaler, so she's got asthma, and she can't go more than a couple hundred feet without having to suck off of that thing. So is she really a huge threat for you in the final? I don't know. I mean, if you had to go against her in a hall brawl, which you're not likely to have, I could see you being scared. But to have to run and test your endurance like you normally do in a final, I don't think that Jenny's really going to be that big of a threat to you unless she has somebody that can carry her. All right, we get to the challenge. Again, it's a mini final, so it's going to be on the beach of Vietnam, and it is pretty hot, so it's going to be pretty challenging. The first checkpoint is them sprinting to a point in the sand where they have to dig out a key. From there, they'll run to checkpoint 2 and use the key to unlock their paddleboard. From there, they'll go ahead and paddleboard a mile upriver and then run into the jungle about another mile to checkpoint 3, which is a memory challenge. Once they complete the memory challenge, then they have to run another mile through the sand. It's like a desert, which I didn't think Vietnam had deserts, but they have to go over a bunch of sand dunes, and it's pretty crappy, and it looks pretty terrible, and like I said, it looks really hot. So, while this isn't a very long mini final, it is going to be very taxing just due to the heat and humidity of being over there in Vietnam at that time of the year. As we get ready to start, TJ reiterates that Theo's got a penalty. We find out it's going to be a 2-minute penalty, so that's a lot more harsh than what Michelle had last week. She only had a 30-second penalty, so we'll see how that plays out. Like I said, he goes ahead, hits the horn. Theo's left at the starting line, and everybody's off to their first starting point. And Derek takes an early lead. He has said that he's a runner. He was a runner when he was in high school. We've seen him be pretty fast on All-Stars 4. And he gets to that first challenge very quickly. But, he just cannot find the key at that point. So that did him really no good. Everybody is still struggling to find the key as soon as they dig their hole, the beach sand's filling right back in. So it's really not as easy as it sounds. Theo catches pretty much everybody at that first challenge. I think as he's getting there, Bananas is taking off. So that 2-minute penalty really didn't hurt him too much as he's able to find his key pretty quickly. He says it's because of his long arms, but, whatever you got to use to win, it worked for him. So we see him get out of there relatively quickly. Johnny is the first to arrive at the memory challenge. He basically dominates the first half of this whole mini final. We see Derek, Cara, Laurel, Aviv. They all get timed out at the first challenge trying to find their key, and they're told to go ahead and move on. So it doesn't really end up hurting them too much, but I do think if you time out, that's it at that point. You should be out of it, but this is a purge at the end, so they do have to have a loser. So I guess I see the point of allowing them to continue on, but I just would have left them there to dig for that freaking key and move on. I don't know why they just assessed the 30-minute time limit at that point, but I digress. Anyway, we get to the memory challenge, and on one side you have a season that you have to memorize. It's underneath it's one of those reed boats that you saw from the first episode, flipped over, so now it just looks like a shell for a shell game, but it has a season underneath on one side, and that corresponds to a letter. Then on the other side, you have the season that corresponds to a number. And you have to remember these things because they're not in season order. So you just have to remember where it goes. So, like I said, Johnny's first to get there, but everybody pretty much catches up within the next couple of minutes. So it's pretty much the equalizer at this point. Whoever gets out of there the fastest is going to win. Johnny is the first to go ahead and call a check, but he's not correct. He just can't seem to figure out what he's done wrong. Kylan is pretty much like a minute behind him, and he gets it right on the first try, and he's out with Jordan about another minute behind him. So it's going to be a race between those two to see who ends up winning this thing. Now remember that Bananas, Johnny, and Nehemiah are all the targets this week. So, Jordan does have an opportunity to go ahead and get himself out of the deliberations for going into the arena. It becomes a foot race, though, and that lead that Kylan's able to get is able to go ahead and propel him to the win. We see Tori, she's the first woman out of there. Rachel's like 2 minutes behind her, but doesn't really have a shot of catching her, and Tori goes ahead and wins it for the women. So Kylan and Tori are going to be the decision makers as we go into the deliberations, and I think since Tori's the decider, I think we know who's going in. She's not going to pick Jordan for sure, and unless Johnny gets purged out, it's pretty much going to be him at this point. Pretty much everybody has made it out of the puzzle checkpoint at about the same time. Johnny finally gets out of there, but it does leave Michelle and Laurel as the two lone females back at the memory challenge, fighting to see who's going to come in last and get purged. And then you also have Nehemiah's back there with Derek and Theo. So one of those three is going to get purged, and then between, the other one's obviously going to get thrown into the arena. Like I said, Nehemiah is the other target that's up for elimination tonight. Eventually, Michelle gets it right, so Laurel is out at this point. She's been purged, and to be honest with you, she's a POS, to be perfectly honest with you. She kind of has a meltdown there in the sand, saying how she hates everybody, hates the game, she's ready to go home, this is the worst thing ever, this is torture, like just kind of being a bad sport about it. This is really no different than anything that you did in All-Stars 4 to go ahead and win, and only because Cara got totally screwed and Laurel was able to go ahead and get all the help from everybody, was she able to win All-Stars 4, but she did not come into this in shape at all to compete on the level of these women that are left in there. I mean, even Olivia could probably beat her in a foot race at this point. So Laurel, who everybody was pretty scared of and had caused a lot of issues in the beginning of the game, is now out. Michelle will be assessed a penalty next week since it will be a women's elimination, but she's pretty comfortable coming in last at this place. Derek finally gets out of the memory challenge, so now it's between Theo and Nehemiah as who's going to get purged and who's going to be the guy that ends up going into the elimination. And unfortunately for Nehemiah, Theo's able to go ahead and get out of there and make it across the finish line, leaving Nehemiah to go ahead and get purged. So that's kind of sad because Nehemiah's a pretty good guy, but I don't know that he's also on par with everybody else, but he was a nice calming influence in the house. Theo ends up losing probably by a little bit less than 2 minutes, so that penalty really did come into play. And unfortunately, as the last person coming across the line, he's going to automatically go into the arena that evening. Like I said, the other two targets now since Nehemiah's out is Jordan and Bananas. With Tori picking, I think we all know who's going to go in. So the deliberation commences, but it's really no surprise. I mean, Banana knows what's happening. Tori is never going to pick Jordan unless Jordan says throw me in. So Johnny's going to face off against Theo in the arena, and he is not really excited about it because Theo is an Olympian. So it's very evenly matched, and it could be even skewed towards Theo depending on what the elimination is. As they walk into the arena, all we see is these two cylinders and a bunch of poles, not really sure what's going on. TJ goes ahead and explains it. He calls it the cramping out, and that's probably a pretty accurate statement. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to take these poles, they're going to have 8 to start with, and strategically place them so that it becomes an obstacle as you have to crawl through these cylinders. They're going to have a minute to get through the cylinder, and then they'll go over to face TJ, and then they'll play a game of high-low. The first person that gets there to start the game will go ahead and cut the deck, and they'll have the opportunity to go first. with the high-low game. If they win high-low, then they get to place 2 poles. If they lose, then they get to place 1 more pole. And they'll continue this until they can't get through, either in that 1 minute time limit, and then or at some point the time will be reduced to 30 seconds, making it that much harder. So we go ahead and commence, and the guys are doing a pretty good job of getting through it. Banana wins the first 3 rounds, so he's adding, he gets to add 6 extra poles to Theo's 3. Then Theo finally starts winning some high-low games, and it almost becomes even. But the luck of the draw, Banana just keeps on able to get those extra poles. But Theo's able to snake his way through the cylinder, so he's really putting up a good fight. After round 13, they go ahead and they lower the time limit to 30 seconds. And to be honest with you, on round 13, Theo really had a hard time trying to get through that tunnel. So it wasn't really looking too good that Theo was going to be able to get through it. And he lost the game of high-low, so Banana gets to put 2 more poles in there. TJ blows the horn, and unfortunately, Theo's just not able to get through there in time. He gave it a good go, but he just wasn't able to get through. So once again, Bananas wins, but he knows that he is in some serious trouble at this point unless his Angels can start winning on the girls' day to keep him out. But at this point, Tori's looking really strong, and she may be able to dominate at this point. So it'd be real interesting to see what happens as we go forward. With Bananas being the winner, he gets to pick the targets for the females next week. Since Tori's off the table, that really only leaves 3 options because the rest are Angels. So he picks Olivia, Michelle, and then Cara because there's really nobody else for him to pick. So if Tori does continue to win, obviously somebody from the Angels is going to have to get thrown in. And if Johnny keeps getting thrown in for the guys, he's going to have to reveal, who his bottom feeder is and keep throwing that person to the wolves. So it'll be real interesting to see as we go forward how that shakes out. And, see if Bananas can continue to win his way through it, or if, his luck finally does run out. Only time will tell. But I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see how next week goes. See you later.